So, but you say, well, this is a target. Now, a good archer can, well, the archer is good, my drawing is not good. Okay. So, a good archer can hit the exact target. Hmm? But an excellent archer can hit the target not only from the front, but also from the side. And not just from one side, but from multiple sides, you can see. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, what happens is there is a contextual purpose of the Gita. In the context, what is to be done. And then there is a, you could say, a philosophical analysis or a philosophical purpose of the Gita. In the context, what Krishna wants Arjuna to do is fight. And that philosophical reasoning, which will lead Arjuna to fight, Krishna does that from different perspectives. And broadly, he did this philosophical. So philosophical purpose means philosophical analysis which concludes in a particular purpose. And this Krishna does in three ways: through analyzing karma yoga, through analyzing bhakti yoga, and through analyzing jnana yoga. So Krishna talks about all these three paths, but whatever the path Arjuna chooses, Krishna says that yes, if you want to follow jnana yoga, fight. If you want to follow bhakti yoga, fight. If you want to follow karma yoga, fight. Now, how does he do that? Now, yeah, each of these processes have slightly different understandings. Well, slightly is too an understatement. There are significantly, substantially different understandings of how the process is to be followed, even what is the ultimate realization to be achieved. But still, it is Krishna's expertise. It's, see, suppose somebody is, somebody has severe diabetes. Now they may try naturopathy, they may try allopathy, they may try homeopathy or whatever pathies we don't know about also. So, but now the specific treatments may be different. But maybe all of them may tell, okay, you have to regulate your diet. You have to decrease your sugar intake. That would be like a common element. Now the reasoning that they use to arrive at that may be different. Ayurveda may talk about how sugar affects the body in terms of how it causes kapha vata pitta imbalance. Allopathy may analyze in a different way. It may talk about how the calories increase, how the insulin level increases. Naturopathy may have some other way of analyzing. But so in one sense, there is a common prescription, but a varying analysis. So the Gita is like that. Krishna analyzes multiple paths. So that's why I said three different ways of hitting the same bullseye. So we could say Krishna hits that same bullseye to karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. And what is the bullseye? Bullseye is Arjuna should fight. So in that context, Krishna wants Arjuna to fight. And in karma yoga, it is relatively straightforward. That you do karma and do it with detachment, but still you do karma. And that means you have to, for Arjuna, the karma is to fight. When we talk about bhakti yoga, Krishna says, bhakti yoga is not just about turning away from the world. He talks about how you have to remember Krishna in the world. And then do your karma with a devotional consciousness. I'll talk about bhakti yoga a little bit more in our overview. But in jnana yoga, what Krishna says is, so if I put it this way, so in all three, karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, the way Krishna is analyzing is all three have one common element is action. So in karma yoga, the idea is we have action, I'll put it here, action plus detachment. So action plus detachment is karma yoga. Okay. So is there some signal when I was talking about detachment, you garland me? The exact time. You know, when you read a book, there's a text and there is a subtext. So, so now in Bhakti Yoga, there is action plus devotion. Now in Jnana Yoga, there is action which will eventually lead to renunciation, or it will be lead to basically knowledge and renunciation, Jnana and Vairagya. So even in Jnana Yoga, Krishna says that first one has to perform one's actions till one comes to the level, at the appropriate level of renunciation, and then one can renounce. And in between, Krishna talks about Dhyana Yoga also, which I will not go into over here. But similarly, Krishna says Dhyana Yoga has a pre-renunciation level, and there is where you should function. So that is whatever path you follow, Krishna tells Arjuna that you renounce, you function, you act. So with this quick understanding, so sometimes we may think that, sometimes some people say that there are broadly two metaphors which the various commentators have used for analyzing the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita at one level, in terms of the Sanskrit style, the vocabulary itself, it's a very simple book. It's a short and simple book in terms of vocabulary and length. But in terms of concepts, it's very complicated. So in trying to make sense of the various parts in the Gita, commentators broadly have used two broad metaphors, many metaphors. Now, one metaphor which we commonly use in ISKCON is the ladder metaphor. And the other metaphor, which also has been used by some Vaishnava commentators, that is the wheel metaphor. So just as a wheel has spokes, so the various spokes, they link from the various outer parts to the center. So this wheel metaphor is what? That ultimately this is the this center, whatever the center, this is the ultimate reality. And this ultimate reality is at the core, and what we observe, what we experience, this is at the outer level is the material reality. And the various yoga paths are like the spokes of a wheel. They all are meant to take us towards. So karma yoga is one, Jnana yoga is one, bhakti yoga is one, ashtanga yoga is one. I have more wheels than paths over here. So some people consider Raj Yoga to be another path. But anyway. So now, in general, this metaphor is preferred by impersonalists. The wheel metaphor. It's not always so. There are some sections in some Vaishnava commentators I also refer to this metaphor. But I'll explain how they refer to it. And in general, the Vaishnava commentators, so this ladder metaphor is basically, now the metaphor itself specifically may or may not be used, but that concept, that is used by the Vaishnava commentators, the personalists. So in this ladder metaphor, the idea is, so at the top of the ladder, there is an ultimate reality. So here there is the spiritual reality, and it is that spiritual reality that is to be attained. And the various yogas are like ladders. Now, sometimes we have a very simplistic understanding of this, that say karma yoga is at the lowest ladder and bhakti yoga is at the highest rung of the ladder. But actually that's an oversimplification, because each yoga path is complete in itself. No, so it's not just one rung on the ladder. It's a little more complicated. So I'll talk about this metaphor a little bit later again when we talk about bhakti yoga. But the idea is that these are two broad metaphors. The ladder metaphor. In the ladder metaphor, the idea is that there are multiple levels of reality, and different yoga paths take us to different levels of reality. So, for example, if I put it this way, so basically, rather than thinking of various yoga paths to be like various rungs on the ladder. A little more nuanced way of understanding it is that ultimate reality itself is multi-level. So if you consider like a multi-story building, or put it this way, that a building which has a terrace which has multiple levels to it. So the terrace may have itself like a place where people can play. The terrace may have a water tank. The terrace may have a place where a top where a flag could be put. So there's a building. At the top of the building there is a terrace, and at the terrace, so if this is the overall building, and then this whole structure is like the terrace. So the way the Bhagavad Gita explains, if we look at it, is, okay, how do I get this to smaller? Okay, this way. So there are 3 different ladders. I will keep the ladders as 3. 3 is complicated enough. The more ladders, the more complex it will become. So we could put it this way, that one ladder goes to the first level of the terrace. Another ladder starts from the same bottom but goes to the second level of the terrace. And there is a third ladder which goes to the top level of the terrace. So this ladder is Karma Yoga. So this ladder is Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. This ladder is Bhakti Yoga. And this 3-level terraces, this is Brahman. This is Paramatma. This is more Dhyana Yoga rather than Jnana Yoga. We can keep Paramatma and Bhagavan. So we could go into further nuances, how some amount of bhakti is required in each path, but let's not make it more complicated at this stage. So in one sense, the wheel model is also fair, because Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan all are the ultimate reality. So they are different aspects of the ultimate reality. But Brahman is also a state of liberation. Sometimes we can devalue certain aspects of the ultimate reality. Like sometimes we say, oh, we are practicing Krishna Bhakti, we are going to Goloka and not Vaikuntha. We treat Vaikuntha like the place where we put our background trash. No, it's not like that. Vaikuntha is very elevated, even Brahman is very elevated, because it is the ultimate reality. So Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So we could say these are all like ladders. So imagine if you have a house, different ladders are placed at different places, you go to different levels. So with this analysis broadly, let's look at the flow of the Gita. If we consider, now there are 18 chapters. So broadly, we can say Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So the way it is this is, let me remove this. This is say chapter 1 to 18. So this is 6, this is 12. So the way the flow of the Bhagavad Gita goes is that here it is from chapters 1 to 6, it is from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. That's why at 6.47 we have Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. So then from the 13th chapter onwards, it is Jnana Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. So that's why now, so let me put it this way. So this is, you could, even Karma Yoga is a very elevated level in one sense. So this is the Karma Yoga level, this is the Jnana Yoga level, this is the Bhakti Yoga level. So in the middle 6 chapters, Krishna is essentially talking about Bhakti Yoga. So this is Jnana Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. So at the end of the Jnana Yoga section, Krishna talks about how we are, how Brahmano hi pratisthaham in 1854, and then he says at the end of it, what happens? Mad bhaktim labhate param. So that na shochati na kankshati samaha sarveshu bhuteshu, that is the Brahman level of realization. But beyond that is bhakti. So now in this particular analysis, the chapters 7 to 12 are focused on bhakti. And what Krishna is doing in this is that actually he is analyzing bhakti in different ways. So we said 6 chapters are about bhakti, but it's not the same analysis that is being done. So in the 7th chapter, now I'll focus on the flow from 7 to 12. So 7 to 8, Krishna gives what you can broadly say is like an intro to bhakti. I won't go into the flow of the chapter at this stage, but Krishna says that that very state that can be attained. So in the first 6 chapters, Krishna has talked about how from the state of from karma yoga through Dhyana yoga to bhakti yoga. So 647 is yoginam api sarvesham. So that particular state can be attained. And then Krishna says in 7.1, now I will describe to you another path by which the same process, same destination can be attained. And we could put it this way, that this is, so often when we say that this is more like the staircase path, and this is more like the elevator path. So that very stage, that yoginam api sarvesham, all the yogis are completely absorbed in me. Krishna says, Mai asakta manaha. That state of making your mind attached to me, how to attain that? Touch shrunu. You hear that from me now. That is what Krishna is going to describe in the 7th chapter. He says, now in the 7th chapter, he describes that. In the 6th chapter, when Krishna has talked about Dhyana yoga, Arjuna has expressed his reservation. This is difficult to practice. He says, Yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatva sitim stiram. See, it's interesting in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when we talk about Arjuna's reservations, we often quote 634. There are 2 verses where Arjuna expresses reservation. 634, does anyone know what it is? But Arjuna is expressing his reservations. I can't practice Dhyana yoga. It's chanchalam hi manah Krishna. Oh, you're looking at it? Or you know it? Oh, okay. It's a different book. Pramati balavadrudam nigraham manye vayor. Oh, so your mind is not chanchal at all. Nice. So thank you. Good. So now, generally we quote this verse. If we literally look at this verse, chanchalam imana Krishna pramati balavadrudam, or the mind is lustrous, the mind is mad, the mind is obstinate. If somebody starts saying my mind is like that, we would think that that person is practically dysfunctional. That person has to be taken to a mental health care center or something like that. Now, Arjuna is not a dysfunctional individual. Arjuna is a very successful individual. So his objection, when we talk about the process of yoga, say for us, we say going out to a jungle and practicing meditation in a jungle. See, it's very difficult for us. Now, in Kali Yuga, there are very few jungles. And then even if you go to jungles, there are not many peaceful places within jungles. And even if you go to a peaceful place, the very discomfort of the jungle means we won't stay peaceful for very long. So the whole purpose will be defeated for most of us. But Arjuna is not expressing any reservation about that. Because going to a jungle and practicing yoga is something Arjuna has already done before. Just before the Kurukshetra war, when Arjuna had to acquire various weapons. He was living in a jungle, but he went specifically to the Himalayas to perform tapasya, to appease the various gods and get their blessings in the form of their weapons. So the physical aspect of yoga is not a problem. It is the mental aspect of yoga. Yoyam yogastvaya prokta samyena madhusudana. Samya is equanimity. Etasyaham na pashyami. He says that basically who can renounce the world? The person who can renounce the world is the person who has situated their mind in equanimity. Now, if somebody is thinking, oh, this is an evil person, this person should be brought down. This is a good person, they should be promoted. Now, as long as we are thinking in these kind of differences, then you cannot really renounce the world. So the idea is that Arjuna says to Krishna, when Krishna has earlier said that Suhrun Mitra Udhasina Madhyastha Dvesha Bandhushu, that see friends and enemies equally, see virtues and vicious equally. Arjuna says that I cannot do. There is no way I can see Yudhishthir and Duryodhan equally. If I try to do that, that is the times. Chanchalami mana Krishna pramati balavadruda. My mind becomes filled with memories of what Duryodhan has done, how Yudhishthir has acted, and how can I see the two of them equally? Sorry. Hare Krishna. Is there a noticeable difference? Oh, okay. Okay, so now it is better, is it? Okay, sure. Is that assurance or a warning? So, so now Arjuna says that this mental aspect, that staying equipoised, that is very difficult. And actually, Krishna does not really address Arjuna's question. He says, no, if you keep practicing, you stay detached, you will grow. But in the sixth chapter, where was I? Okay. In seventh chapter, there's an introduction to Bhakti Yoga. Then, in the eighth chapter, there is a Bhakti Yoga, Dhyana Yoga comparison. Because Dhyana Yoga has been talked about in the sixth chapter. And Krishna says that, okay, focusing the mind on ultimate reality through Dhyana Yoga may be difficult, but through Bhakti Yoga it's easy. Tasyaham sulabha partha nityayuktasya yogina. That is 8:14. And then, after having established Bhakti Yoga as the best way, now in the ninth chapter, Krishna goes deeper into Bhakti Yoga. So, in some ways, chapters 7 and 9 are similar. But the same points are explained from a different and deeper perspective. Sometimes when there is repetition, sometimes you ask the same question, sometimes the person asks the same question again and again. Now, if the same question is repeated, in fact, this happens in the Gita, and this shows Krishna's expertise as a teacher. If you consider the question in 2.7, 3.1, 5.1, and 18.1, essentially it is the same question. 2.7 is what is the right thing to do. 3.1 and 2 is, you are recommending knowledge, but then you are asking me to act. Which is better? Should I act or should I renounce? 5.1 is, again, you are praising sannyas, but then you are asking me to do karma. What do you want me to do actually? 18.1 is asking what is the difference between sannyasa and tyaga. So sannyasa is more of external renouncing the world. Tyaga is internally cultivating attachment from the world. So essentially the same question is being repeated. Now when the same question is repeated, there are two unhealthy ways to deal with that question. So if the same question is repeated, so if suppose a speaker gives a class, and the very topic of the class, if the whole class is about, say, how to manage anger, and the speaker gives systematic class, gives 3-4 points, this is what you can do, this is what to do, and the first question is, so how do we manage anger? So then the tendency is, were you hearing also? Had you gone to sleep? There is a tendency to get angry and to insult the intelligence of the audience. Are you dumb? Have you not understood till now? Why are you repeating the question? So one unhealthy way is, if you consider pendulum, insult the intelligence of the questioner. And the other unhealthy way is to repeat the same answer. So The question I'm going to say, yeah, my hearing was not the problem. I heard the answer previously. So basically, what has happened is at that time, the answer was not understood. Okay, you heard it, but you did not understand it. Arjuna, at the end of the Gita, Krishna also asked two questions to Arjuna. Kachit eta shrutam partha toy ekagrena chetas. Have you heard? And the second part is, you have heard, have you comprehended? Kachit ajnana sammoha pranashtaste dhananjaya. Has your ignorance and illusion been dispelled? So the healthy way to deal with this, if the same question is being repeated, it is the balance. If you could put the pendulum, this is not a balance pendulum. It is answer from different perspectives. So what will happen is one perspective will stick to the person. So suppose we want to talk about, say, the existence of the soul or the idea of reincarnation. We may give some empirical evidence, we may give some logical evidence, we may talk from the perspective of the problem of evil, we may talk from the perspective of the meaning of life. And we can talk from different perspectives, maybe one perspective clicks to the person. So that is what Krishna does in the Bhagavad Gita. That in each of these, I don't have time to go into this now, but the 2.7 questions answered from one perspective, where Krishna focuses primarily on the eternality of the soul and how, okay. So what you did was a warning. Okay, it was not you. Okay, you. So anything can be done about this, or is the sound tolerable? Well, I meant not my sound. That sound. Okay. So in when third chapter Arjuna asked the question, at that time Krishna talks about the principle of sacrifice. That how we need to look at the bigger picture, the bigger results. The fifth chapter, when Krishna asked the question, Arjuna asked the question, Krishna talks about how our inner motivations determine the results. In the 18th chapter, when Arjuna asked the same question, there Krishna talks from the perspective of the three modes. Because that is a concept which is introduced in 14th chapter, and that's why he will talk about jnana in the three modes, buddhi in the three modes, karma in the three modes, karta in the three modes. So what Krishna is expertly answering the question from different perspectives. So similarly, what Krishna is, he has explained Bhakti Yoga in chapter 7, and again in chapter there is again Bhakti Yoga, but you can say there is a deep dive into Bhakti Yoga. So the same Bhakti Yoga analysis, are similar concepts, but there's a deeper analysis over there. And this is where we are going to focus on. This chapter is very important in one sense, because immediately after this, in the next chapter, Krishna, in the middle, there is the Chatur Shloki Gita. Chatur Shloki Gita, after that, more or less, the Gita is over. This 4-verse summary, the Gita ends. Did you just replace the old mic, or? Sorry? Oh, new battery, okay. So there are musical chairs and there are musical mics. So. Okay, so let's continue. So now, all that I spoke till now is like the, what do you say, preamble to the class. So now the class will begin. Or we can end the class now. Depends. So basically, I'll say we can end the classes. How many of you have any questions at this point? Okay, 1. Anyone else? 2. You have 2 questions. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll continue for some time and then we can discuss. So I'll talk about the first section of the 9th chapter. I could do a quick overview of how Krishna is now talking about bhakti yoga from different perspectives within the ninth chapter. What has happened is Krishna has told Arjuna, you have to fight with your mind fixed on me. Ma manusmara yuddhecha. So now, in order to explain that, okay, if you're going to fight, how can you keep the mind fixed on me? That is the point. How can you keep the fixed mind? Because the mind is going to encounter different things in the world. So then, for helping the mind to be fixed on the Lord, Krishna talks about his own glory from different perspectives. And he talks about the object of devotion and the glory of the object of devotion, so that there will be greater ease in remembering him. Now broadly, now we could divide this into further sections, but at this stage I'll keep the sections simple. So there are, anyone remembers how many verses are there in the ninth chapter? Sorry? Oh, you don't check it, is it? Okay, no, 34, good. So the 34 verses in the ninth chapter. So we could put it this way, that broadly you can, this chapter, now again the division of the chapters are also not necessarily standard. Different acharyas are done in different ways. And I'm going to talk about it from a particular perspective, where Krishna is, in the first 10 verses, talks about how practicing bhakti is the best use of free will. Practicing bhakti is the best use of our free will. In the second 10 sections, from 10 to, he talks about the path to the ultimate reality. So basically he's talking about how there are multiple levels of reality, and the ultimate reality can be attained by bhakti. And that is where he will talk about different worshippers and different people who worship different things. And in the last section, there are 4 ways bhakti is the best path from wherever we may be. So here Krishna's focus is on how bhakti is the best path from whatever level we are at. So there are 3. So earlier, this is again another way of looking at it. I talked earlier about the same target being hit from 3 different directions. So 1 to 10, that is the you could say one arrow is hitting it by talking, we all have free will. So how can we, so best use of free will? That's the first section. So bhakti is the best use of free will, therefore practice bhakti yoga. Then the second section is that, okay, there are multiple levels of reality, but if you want to attain the highest reality, that highest reality can be attained by the practice of bhakti. So attaining highest reality. And then, now you may talk about attaining the highest reality, that is nice, this is the best use of free will, but I am at a particular point right now. How can I rise from where I am? So 21 to 34 is best path up from our present situation. From present. By the way, is what I am writing visible from there? Oh, okay. So you're far more resourceful than what I thought. Okay. That is good. So I'm not going to ask whether it is legible, because even I know it is not. I only ask whether it is visible. So till I started using this tablet, the last 10 years, I used my pen and handwriting for only 2 purposes. Signing my visa forms and signing my books. I was not using it at all, so I have to get used to it now. So okay. So these three ways are what we will be discussing in the next few sessions that we have, where how Krishna is establishing the glory of Bhakti Yoga from different perspectives. So this is a so in this session till now what we have discussed is broadly. First I discussed the relationship between paths in the Gita. Hmm? How there are two more metaphors. Anyone remember two metaphors? Ladder and wheel. Then we talked about second part was the flow of the Gita. How the Gita is going from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. And then last part we discussed was the chapter 9's significance and structure or flow. Hmm. I use the word structure because significance and structure is a rhyme, but flow is better. Anyway, so let's have some questions. If we have time, then I'll go into the first section of the 9th chapter. Okay. Any questions? Yes, please. Nice to be here again. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So happy to have you here. So, Prabhu, in the beginning, you mentioned that all the three paths, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, they are like complete in itself, and the personals or the Vaishnavas, they, yes, they not directly but implicitly we follow that ladder principle. So, doesn't it like contradicts
Well,
the first
it
one?
depends on what we are talking about. See, is a school complete in itself? A school is complete in itself if somebody wants to get, say, the high school kind of education. So, is a university complete in itself? Yeah, okay, if you want to get a graduate degree. But if somebody wants to get post graduation, somebody wants to do PhD. So, for particular purposes, a school, sometimes you may have the same institution running a school, a college, and then it may have some facility for doctoral research also. So, you could get it to different levels of proficiency. So, a school is complete in itself for its purpose. But does that mean the school gives us complete proficiency in the subject? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. No, actually. So, like Karma Yoga is like the school. Karma Yoga takes a person from material entanglement to liberation. But after in the post-liberated state, what is one going to do? That is not so clear for the Karma Yogi. So it takes so similarly, Dhyana Yoga are also complete in themselves. For they take us from, they are complete in the sense that they take us from the material world to the material level of consciousness to spiritual level of consciousness. So another way to look at this is that if I if we consider this as a material level of reality, sorry, this is spiritual level, this is material level. Then the various yoga paths, all yoga paths are like this. Whether it is Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, all of them they take us from material level of reality to spiritual level of reality. But then you could analyze it further. You could say spiritual reality is not one level, but it is also multi-level. So you could have the Brahman level of realization, you could have the Paramatma level of realization, you could have the Bhagavan level of realization. So this is spiritual reality. And similarly, material reality is also multi-level. There is sattva, okay, so this sattva over here, rajas over here, tamas over here, and this is material reality. So now if you take it from this perspective, in general, the idea is most other paths, you need to be somewhere in sattva. How can a person function? Sometimes people feel that the path of karma is meant for me because I'm hardworking. Well, being hardworking doesn't make you practice karma yoga. It makes you do karma. The yoga will come when there is some sattva. Hmm? So, in general, karma yoga, and certainly if somebody wants to renounce the world. So, Gyan yoga and Dhyan yoga, they actually, in one sense, start from the summit of sattva yoga. Not sattva yoga, sattva guna. Hmm? Gyan yoga and Dhyan yoga. So, it is only bhakti yoga that goes from the bottom to the highest. Somebody can be in tamoguna, they can start practicing bhakti yoga and they can rise to the level of bhagavan. So from the perspective of taking one from material level to spiritual level, all paths are complete. But from the perspective of taking us from where we are to the summit of spiritual reality, it is bhakti yoga which is the most complete path. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, bro. Good question.
Welcome to ISV Project. We're very happy that you're here. I remember every time you come, you take few aspects of Bhagavad Gita and churn them and introduce newer tastes and Dasa. So thank you very much. So my question is actually simple. Can you please give a couple of examples of in Krishna recommending in Jnana Yoga? You said in the beginning he recommended just work and eventually they will attain such a state where they can then do meditation. Some
So
examples.
Krishna recommending?
In Jnana Yoga, usually when I think of Jnana Yoga, I thought we will just study most of the time spent in understanding knowledge.
Okay, so now there is a difference between karma and karma yoga. Similarly, jnana and jnana yoga. They're not the two. They're not. They're not. The two are not the same things. In fact, now Advaitavad, what we call as Mayavad, Advaitavad also has many different interpretations. In fact, Mayavad, just like in Vaishnavism, there is Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there is Sri Vaishnavism, like that. There are different schools of Vaishnavism. So within Advaitavad, there are different schools, and one of the schools of Advaitavad is Mayavad. The Mayavad has become so widespread that Advaitavad is almost equated with Mayavad. But it is not necessarily like that, all of it. The point I'm making is that technically, if you consider the Gyan Yoga as is talked by the Advaitavadis, they say you study scripture. That is important. But ultimately, the realization that you are Brahman, that doesn't come from scriptural study. It is a trans-scriptural conclusion. Scriptural study is just a means, but ultimately it has to rise spontaneously within yourself. So that's why in Jnana Yoga, it is not even Jnana Yoga as it's practiced, it is not so much study of scripture as it is more of contemplation on scripture to get that realization. So if the Bhagavatam we talk about, when they talk about Jnana Yoga, it's more of Vimarshanam. Vimarshanam is immersing oneself in contemplation on spiritual reality. Scripture is definitely a tool, but study of scripture is a common factor for all paths. In Bhakti Yoga, people study scripture. In Dhyana Yoga, people study scriptures. In Karma Yoga, also people study. They may not study that much, but they study. So it is not that jnana, the aspect of nourishing one's intelligence is not the monopoly of Jnana Yoga. It is common for everyone. Now, where does Krishna recommend Jnana Yoga? Well, in general, Krishna does not recommend Jnana Yoga. Krishna, in fact, doesn't even recommend Dhyana Yoga. See, there is a difference between description and recommendation. Like suppose somebody has got cancer, and the doctor may describe, okay, you have this, you can do this chemotherapy, you can do the radiotherapy, you can do this, you can do that. But then at the end, if they ask, okay, so what do you recommend? And at that time, the doctor says something. That's quite different. So in general, in the 6th chapter, if you see, Krishna is giving generally a description of Dhyana Yoga. Baldev Vidyabhushan in his Vedanta Sutra commentary, Govinda Bhasha says that, he's quoting Mimamsa, where he says that statements made in the imperative are instructions. Do this. That is the instruction. So, for example, Sarva Dharman Parityajya is an instruction. Dehi nosmin yatha dehe is an instruction. Is it? Now, we can draw some wisdom from it, but Dehi nosmin dehe is a description. So, similarly, for example, it says, if you look at at most of the verses in the 6th chapter, when Krishna is describing Suchau Deshe Patishthapya Sthirmasanam Atmanaha, he is not telling Arjuna, you go and sit like a yogi. Yes? The yogis do this. The yogis sit in a secluded places. Yogis have their back erect and the samam kaya shirogrivam, that their head, neck and back are in one straight line. And this is cha navalokaya, and they're focused on one place. Maybe at the tip of the nose. So it's mostly description. So in general, Krishna is not recommending Dhyana Yoga anywhere. He describes the process and he lets Arjuna himself realize that this process is not for me. Like suppose a doctor, somebody has cancer and the doctor describes a particular process. Maybe the doctor is not a fan of chemotherapy. Now most people, nobody is a fan of chemotherapy generally. It's a painful process. It depends of course on cancer. But the doctor may describe the process in such a way the patient says, what is the alternative? Tell me something else. So Krishna also is like that. So Gyan Yoga itself, Krishna describes from 1849 to 53. That is the main process where Krishna describes the process of Gyan Yoga. Apart from that, he's analyzing the concepts associated with Gyan Yoga in the 13, 14, 15, 16 chapters. Like Guna, the analysis of the modes is very important for all spiritualists, but it is especially important for the Gyan Yogis. The concept of Kshetra, Kshetragya, all that, which is in the 13th chapter, that is very much associated with Sankhya, which is foundational to the path of Jnana. Okay? Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Thank you for the nice lecture, Prabhuji. So, my question is related to the ladder that we described. So, we see that in Bhagavad Gita, in the context it was spoken by Lord, is the context of battle. So, in that, one need direct instruction and not choice kind of instruction. So, as Lord Krishna
So what do
is
you mean
giving,
direct and choice?
means three choices, right? Means in that ladder we saw Gyan Yoga,
Okay.
Dhyana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Instead of giving direct instruction of Bhakti Yoga, why Lord Krishna is giving like three choices to Arjuna and then asking him to choose what is best. So,
Okay. So in the Bhagavad Gita, why is Krishna giving Arjuna multiple choices, like 3 choices, and then instead of directly talking Bhakti Yoga? Well, there are 2 different things over here. See, Krishna is addressing Arjuna's questions at the level which Arjuna is asking the question. So, nowhere in the Gita does Krishna use his godhood, draw upon the power of his godhood to ram his decision down Arjuna's throat. Like some people, like some bosses may say, you are perfectly free to express your opinion as long as you agree with me. So, that is basically like a pseudo freedom. It is no freedom at all. So I am the boss and you have to listen to me. So if Krishna had wanted to do that, Krishna could have finished the whole Bhagavad Gita in 6 words. I am God. Obey me. Fight. Bhagavad Gita over. See, Krishna could have done that, but he does not do that. In fact, even Krishna, when he reveals the Virat Rupa, it is not to scare Arjuna into submission. Like Arjuna has already accepted Krishna as the ultimate reality in the 10th chapter when he says Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. So Krishna does not use that shortcut. Focusing, like using his godhood to ram down a decision. So Arjuna's question at the start of the Gita is quite universal. In 2.7 he asks the question. The question is about dharma. What is the right thing to do? Dharma in that context basically means Pruchhami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. I'm asking what is the right thing to do. And significant, he's not even asking mama dharma, not what is the right thing for me to do. He's asking a more universal question. How do we determine what is the right thing to do? See, education can happen at multiple levels. If we consider education, so at one level you could just give, let's put instead of use guidance, you can put mode of guidance. It can be just give a decision to the person. That do this, don't do this. And that is helpful at some level, especially if a small child is there. You just have to at this level, it's more like an instruction. Then another level could be that we give the decision. Second is we give reasoning for the decision. Do this, but why should you do this? So in this, sometimes a little more discussion is required. Sometimes persuasion will be required. And this is much better than the first, because that person will be more internally convinced and committed. But the best teachers are those who are best guides, you could say, not just teachers, because education goes on. The best guides are those who make themselves redundant. That means the guidance should be just given such a way that give process for decision making. Don't just tell a person what to do. Don't just tell a person the reasons for doing that thing. Tell a person how to go about the process of making a decision. So that even that person doesn't have an external guide, that person can decide what to do. So this is actually an essential part of growing up. Ultimately, we all will have to make our own decisions in life. We can consult others, but we have to make our decisions. So Krishna's purpose in the Gita is at this third level. It is not just to give a decision. It is not just to give reasons for a decision. It is to help Arjuna develop the process for decision making. And in that context, what Krishna does is that basically Arjuna has two choices: fight or don't fight. And this essentially means, if you generalize it, this is work or renounce. Now, Krishna expands Arjuna's understanding of his choices. He says you don't have just two options, you have actually four options. The four options are, you could have detached work, attached work, false renunciation, and real renunciation. So detached work, that means that you work but with a means of detachment. And then within this, so among these four options, which one do you think that Krishna recommend to Arjuna? So detached, maybe I should write it down, detached work. DW can mean many things, It can mean deity worship, it can mean okay. So false renunciation. So among these, which option does, let's start with which Krishna recommends, which Krishna does not recommend. What do you think? Detached work, he recommends or doesn't recommend? Recommends. Then real renunciation, recommends. Then attached work, no. False renunciation, you could say attached work is no, false renunciation is a double no. He uses the word mithyachara. It's a strong word. Such a person is a deceiver, is a hypocrite. Mithyachara sauchyate, Krishna says. But that is, even then when he's talking about it, it is Krishna is when he says do not disturb the minds of others, he's more talking about you work in a detached way while others are working in an attached way. Say others may be fighting just for going to Swarga or gaining some kingdom, but you fight for a higher purpose. If you renounce the world, then others will renounce the world, and if they are not ready at that level, you will create disruption in society. So, so in one sense, okay, now among detached work, among detached work and real renunciation, which one does Krishna recommend in the Bhagavad Gita more? Correct, detached work. Now you could just take these 4 levels and put them, analyze them in another way. So we have attached work, we have detached work, we have false renunciation, we have real renunciation. So in real renunciation, there are 2 paths over here. There is Jnana Yoga and there is Dhyana Yoga. In attached work, there is Karma Kand. In detached work, there is Karma Yoga and there is Bhakti Yoga. And ultimately, Krishna recommends Bhakti Yoga. So in the Gita, basically, Krishna begins with Arjuna's reference point. Arjuna's reference point is to act or to not act. And from there, he develops his thought. And that's why for Arjuna at the start of the Gita, we could say ultimately it is by the arrangement of Krishna. But Arjuna is in a state of confusion and illusion at that time. But even within that confusion and illusion, it is not total confusion and illusion. That Arjuna is also doing some reasoning. Some reasoning Arjuna is doing. In the first chapter, Arjuna is doing some serious reasoning. It may not be correct reasoning in terms of the full picture. It may not be complete reasoning, but still sound reasoning. He says, what will happen to our dynasty? If leaders of society are killed, then the whole dynasty will be destroyed. Then unscrupulous people will exploit the vulnerable members of the dynasty. And then whole society will become disorderly. So he's making some reasoning. So for example, if somebody is very disturbed at a particular point, and while they're disturbed, they're expressing fear, oh, this may happen, this may happen, this may happen, that may happen. So we may want to calm them down, but even to calm them down, we have to understand what they are thinking, what exactly their fear is. And then we have to penetrate that haze of fear with the light of wisdom. So Arjuna, that's why what Krishna is doing in the Bhagavad Gita is he's starting with Arjuna's reference point. Okay, work or renounce. He says, okay, you are thinking of work and renunciation as 2 options, but I'll give you a synthetic option. That is, work in a mood of renunciation. That you don't, rather than renunciation of work, you can have renunciation in work. And then how to do that? Then he develops, Krishna talks about Karma Yoga there in the second, third, fourth, fifth chapter. And then he goes on to, he talks about, but Arjuna has this question, but do you mean to say that detached work is good? Then one never needs to renounce the world. Then why are there so many sages who renounce the world? He says, yeah, renunciation at a particular level. When he says don't think that the cause of problems in the material world is the tempting objects of the world. It is the mind that is getting attached and tempted. So unless you have calmed the mind to some extent, renunciation is not going to help. Therefore he says, first, even in the path of Dhyana Yoga, first you practice Karma Yoga, and then you go toward Dhyana Yoga. Then you renounce the world. And then when Arjuna says, hey, renouncing the world is very difficult, this particular path of Dhyana Yoga which you're talking, then Krishna says, I'll tell you an alternative path. And then it tells Bhakti Yoga. So he is going through natural progression. And that's how he brings in Bhakti Yoga. Okay? Thank you. Yeah. Well, in real renunciation, the way, technically the word renunciation means one is not doing any work. So real renunciation here is used in the terms of the person who is in the sannyas ashram or the renounced ashram, but they're actually detached from the world. Okay? Artificial renunciation is where somebody has renounced the world, but not only do they still have attachments, but they are actually uh, privately cultivating those attachments. They are indulging in it also in a secret way, in a non-dharmic way. That is the problem. Having attachments is not that every single person who is renounced has to be completely detached. There has to be certainly certain level of detachment by which one is living within the boundaries of dharma, and everybody will have certain attachments. But is one trying to combat the attachments? Is one like putting fuel on the attachments? Is trying to extinguish the attachments? That's what the question is. Okay, thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dhanavad pranam. This is one of the most beautiful introductions to Bhagavad Gita I've ever heard, and I always wanted to study Bhagavad Gita like this. So thank you very much for that. And you made a very important point on how, like Krishna, despite Arjuna asking similar questions, he gives different perspectives so that Arjuna can better appreciate what Krishna is trying to say. So that really stuck with me, that we should never like insult the intelligence of the person who is trying to understand, but we should patiently try explaining from different perspectives. And my question, Prabhuji, is related to Dhyana Yoga. So what is like Dhyana Yoga in the sense of, I always thought that bhakti is also involves meditation on, or absorbing oneself in the Lord's and the devotees' qualities and pastimes. So isn't dhyana an intrinsic part of bhakti? And because in Dhyana Yoga, Krishna mentions toward the end that tapasvibhyo adhiko yogi jnanebhyo api mato adhika karmebhyo
Chadiko yogi,
chadiko yogi tasmat yogi bhava Arjuna. There bhava is imperative.
Yeah.
So he is recommending Arjuna to be a yogi.
Yeah.
Of course, there after that he follows
Then
it
he
up
says
with
yoginamapi
yoginamapi sarvesham.
So see, yes, is dhyana included in bhakti? Yes, of course. They say karma is also included in bhakti. As devotees, we are doing action. We're also cultivating knowledge. So we could say that we are karma, jnana, dhyana. We could consider these as basic human faculties. If we consider them that from that perspective, leave alone in bhakti, even daily activity we are doing some karma. Right? For doing some karma, we need to have some jnana. If I'm going to drive a car, I have to have the jnana of how to drive a car. And then we also all do some dhyana. Somebody say watches a movie. They're watching the movie and then after that they're remembering the movie. So that is some kind of dhyana, isn't it? So in one sense, you could look at these as aspects of basic human function. Now, Dhyana Yoga is a particular process where the central engine. So I talked about all yoga paths take us from the material level to the spiritual level. But when we are going on a journey, what is the fuel for the journey? What is the central? What is it that is driving the journey present mainly? So in Karma Yoga, the main driver for the journey, the driver is maybe fuel is the best word. The main motive force for the journey is karma. In Jnana Yoga, the main motive force for the journey from the material level to the spiritual level is Jnana. In Dhyana Yoga, it is Dhyana. In Bhakti Yoga, the main motive force is Bhakti. Well, it may not contribute concept. Does externally doing activities, does it not constitute bhakti? Well, it's not a very high level of bhakti. If you say in 12, last time when I had come, I talked of the 4 levels from 12, 8, 9, 10, 11 I had taken. So in 12, 8, Krishna says, just let your mind be absorbed in me spontaneously. In 12, 9, he says, if it can't be, then try to conscientiously absorb your mind in me. In 12, 10 says, if you can't even absorb your mind in me conscientiously, or not absorb, focus your mind on me conscientiously. If you can't do that, then at least work for me. So even if there is no inner dhyana, still if you are working for Krishna, that is some level of connection with Krishna. It is some level of bhakti. Not the highest level of bhakti, but it is some level of bhakti. So if we can't do devotional service, at least do service. The devotion will come gradually.
So that Maya Veshita Chetasam, like completely investing the
That is
time,
high level of
Mam
bhakti.
Dhyayanta
That is the high
Upasati.
level of bhakti.
So that dhyana is actually dhyana, right? I mean, in the sense, Mam Dhyayanta Upasate, Krishna says,
Yeah, it is. Technically, the word in that is used in bhakti is more of smaran than dhyana. But like we have the 9 limbs of bhakti, then smaranam is one of the limbs. So smarana at a very deep level, you could call it as dhyana. But Prahlad Maharaj is the embodiment of smaranam. Now he was obviously in dhyana. Somebody thought, and snakes are coming to bite him, and he's being thrown into a fire, and thrown off a cliff. He is completely immersed. So that is smaranam at a very deep level, which is equivalent to dhyana. Maybe maybe I need to do more dhyana to understand your question, or or you need to do more dhyana to articulate your question.
yeah, my main
Okay.
question was like in
Okay,
Dhyana
I
Yoga.
have done my dhyana now. Okay, let me explain it. See, let's put it this way. At one level, you could say karma, jnana, dhyana. These are human faculties. Now, some people are actually more analytical. They like to do a lot of jnana. Some people, they like to cultivate a lot of knowledge. Some people, they don't just cultivate knowledge, they want to go deep into that knowledge. We also know the difference between people who have a lot of information and people who have a lot of insight. I'm just doing a little broad differentiation. It's not simply like that. Jnana and dhyana, but so karma, jnana, dhyana, these are basic human faculties. So if we consider a human being, so if we consider human being, human being, as we will have different faculties. We'll have the faculty of karma, we'll have the faculty of jnana, we'll have various faculties like that. So now, if you can say at one level, everybody has some faculty for bhakti also. That bhakti may not be directed toward Krishna, but somebody may be a Rashtra Bhakta, somebody may be a patriot. There's one of the most famous patriots in American history. He said, "I have only one regret in my life, and that is I have only one life to serve America." No, isn't that the exact sentiment that Prabhupada said? You have one life, give it to Krishna, isn't it? So, in one sense, everybody has some devotion. So, we could say these are just basic human faculties, but they could be directed in different ways. So, now you consider this is the material level, so this is the spiritual level, this is the material level. Now, if you consider this is a human being who is rising from this level to this level. So now, if the faculty which is driving that person, so that person has multiple aspects to it. But if the faculty which is driving that person is the karma, that primary doing action, and that is what is driving this is karma. But if the faculty that is driving that person upwards, from say this person is here, and then the faculty that is driving that person upwards is jnana. Now that person will also have bhakti, that person will also have karma, but the other faculties are becoming much lesser. This will be jnana yoga. Now, if you consider bhakti yoga, so in bhakti yoga, The bhakti is the most prominent faculty. This is for measure. Bhakti is the most prominent faculty. It is the devotion that is to be cultivated. But for different devotees, that devotion may come differently. It is for some people, this the path to devotion may be through karma. That means that they do more service, and by that they feel more connected with Krishna. Now for some people, it may be through Dhyana, that they practice, they study scripture, they get convinced, and it's more like an intellectual appreciation of Krishna. Ultimately, there's absorption in Krishna. But so for somebody, maybe the deepest absorption in Krishna comes maybe when they are dressing the deities or they're cooking some food for Krishna. That's when they get completely immersed in Krishna. For somebody, the deepest absorption in Krishna comes when they're studying scriptures. But everything else, just they forget it at that time. So like that, depending on individual, things may vary. But ultimately, dhyana is smaranam. Mahaprabhu also asked which is the most important limb of bhakti. And normally, we would think that yoga dharma is kirtanam, and that's why it's a kirtanam. But he also said that it is smaran. Ultimately, sorry, Chaitanya Charitamrita. No, it's a. Is it in that section where that Satyaraj Khan he talks about 3 levels of Vaishnavas? There he says that among all limbs of bhakti, that's why he used the example of Prahlad Maharaj. I'll check it exactly. So he says, in terms of the practices of bhakti, he says her holy name chanting is extremely important. But among the limbs of bhakti, something like this. Let me. It's a good question. I'm not able to remember the reference now. But smaranam is important. Like, okay, let's take another reference. Is that the most important limb of bhakti is? We say smartavya satatam Vishnu vismartam jatuchit. Sarva vidhi nishidasur etairo karam. So in that sense, smaranam is considered important. But that smaranam may not rise with equal intensity in everyone. For some people, that smaranam may come through the karma path. For some people, the smaranam may come through the jnana path. So like for example, we go in front of the deities. For some people, when they bow down in front of the deities, when they fold their hands in front of the deities, that's when they feel devotion. For some people, when they go in front of the deities, maybe they remember some verse which they have memorized before. And when they recite that verse and they contemplate that verse, that's when their immersion in Krishna becomes more. So their smaranam has to come. That feeling of devotional, not just remembrance, but a devotional remembrance has to come. But that can come through some of the external activity. Sometimes it can come to the philosophical reflection. Sometimes it may just come through one's absorption.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. There was a question. Yeah. Any of the Vaishnavis have any questions?
I've been contemplating whether I should be asking the question because compared to my other questioners, they are in a different level compared to mine. I have the Bhagavad Gita book. I kept it in the prayer room. That's how knowledge. So today with this diagrams, like 3 yoga paths to reach the 3 stages: Brahman, Paramatma, and the Bhagavan, right? So Karma Yogi will also reach that. All the 3 can reach that stage. So in Bhagavad Gita, that means Bhishma, Drona, all of them are Karma Yogis, or like because Arjuna did it, like the action needed that time is you should fight. That's what, if I understand correct, that's what Bhagavad Gita, that's what Krishna is advising. The same with the detachment, Bhishma also fought, Drona also fought, then all of them reached the same Bhagavan? That stage.
Okay, good question. So now, did Arjuna, Bhishma, Drona all reach the same destination? Well, the Bhagavad Gita was specifically spoken to Arjuna, and when Arjuna, after the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, what he was going to practice. At one level, he practiced the path of action. That is clear enough. He did action. But what was his self-conception, that is seen in his concluding words. In 1873, he says, Karishye vachanam tava. He's not fighting because he wants to do karma yoga. He's fighting because he wants to do Krishna's will. And doing Krishna's will essentially is bhakti yoga. So Arjuna is fighting, he's doing fighting, and that fighting is action, but that does not mean he's doing karma yoga. By his own self-understanding, he is doing bhakti yoga. Now, Bhishma and Drona, well, it depends. Bhishma certainly is revealed in the Bhagavatam to be a great devotee, and he had a particular service at that particular time. So he was doing that service. He had a devotional disposition, no doubt. And because of that devotional disposition, he did attain an ultimate destination of, he attained the spiritual world, he attained Krishna. But at the same time, he fought on the side against Krishna. He supported Duryodhana, or he remained silent when Draupadi was being dishonored. So, this is a complex subject, but let's put it this way, that if we consider this is the material side of reality, and say this is the spiritual side of reality. Now we can say that we living beings exist at both levels, because we are spiritual beings with a material body. Let me put it this way. See, our existence is like this. We are spiritual beings, but we have a material body. So in general, when we practice bhakti, we could say that our consciousness ultimately rises entirely to this level. So we go from existing at both levels to existing at one level itself. And because Bhishma was devotionally focused, he did attain that destination. But while we are in this level, so what happens is, spiritual actions have spiritual results. Material actions have material results. Say for example, as devotees, we try to offer whatever food we take, we offer it to Krishna, and we take his prasad. And prasad is said to be spiritually purifying. And it is spiritually purifying. But at the same time, the prasad is made of material components. So if somebody has diabetes, and then they take a lot of halwa or sweet rice, well, that sweet rice may purify their soul, but it is going to complicate the bodily situation, isn't it? So actions, when we do in the material world, the spiritual side will lead to elevation, but the material side will have consequences. So from the material side perspective, so Krishna, so Bhishma's fighting against Krishna, or more specifically Bhishma's previously remaining silent at the time of Draupadi's dishonoring, that had consequences. And one consequence, and this is Madhacharya's analysis to some extent, and I have not seen anything in the Gaudiya tradition which directly contradicts this. But his understanding is that Bhishma at a physical level experienced a lot of pain. Among all the warriors who died in the Kurukshetra war, we could say Bhishma had an extremely painful situation. Of course, it was his saintly character, his absorption in Krishna, by which he did not feel so much pain. But the fact that there is, sometimes we just use the word arrow bed. But the idea is, the term arrow bed conveys everything opposite to a bed. Isn't it? If we have a bed and even one lump is there under us in the bed, we feel uncomfortable. Imagine if one thorn is there under it. And if the whole bed is made of thorns. So now, of course, because he was spiritually exalted, he did not feel that pain. Krishna gave him that blessings. But at a material level, the actions have reactions. So the point I'm making is that just because Arjuna and Bhishma got the same destination does not mean that their trajectories through life were similar. Arjuna was serving Krishna, and Bhishma, at least in the external dharmic sense, was opposing Krishna. And those choices, although they led ultimately to the same destination, intermediately, there are very different consequences. And that's why bhakti is more about consciously choosing to serve Krishna in a way that is pleasing to him. Some people say that everybody will get liberated ultimately. Like they say, Bhagavad Gita says that Prabhupada once asked this question that, Swamiji, I don't know the verse, but it is said that everybody will ultimately get liberated. So Prabhupada said, if that is the reality, then why does Krishna have to speak the Bhagavad Gita at all? Isn't it? So whatever you do, you are going to get liberated. Well, but that's not the point of the Gita. It's like there is material, there's a path to follow to go from material level to spiritual level. But somebody can go downwards. So not everybody who's doing action is doing karma yoga. Some people, while doing action, if they're acting unethically, they're acting selfishly, they're acting self-destructive, then they're not doing karma yoga, they're doing vikarma. And vikarma will take them deeper down into material entanglement. So we do have to choose judiciously. And that's how we will get elevated.
This is applicable to Vidura also.
Yeah, Vidura was always devoted, and Vidura didn't ever fight on the side of the Kauravas. Vidura walked away from the battle. He strongly tried to stop him. So Vidura definitely, the Bhagavatam describes he attained perfection. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Sorry to deviate from chapter 9, but this question
Oh, no, thank you. It's a good question. That is the way we answered it was related to the chapter analysis. Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, you mentioned the wheel example, how all the spokes of yoga are pointing to the same goal. Can you explain how that can be interpreted by a personalist? You said you'll explain how acharyas explain in a personalist point of view.
So the wheel metaphor would be, if we consider the center of the wheel to be the ultimate reality, and then the spokes of the wheel to be not the spokes of the wheel, the circumference of the wheel to be material reality. So then we could say again that each yoga will take us from material reality to the ultimate reality. So karma yoga will take us. But then again, I made a differentiation. Sometimes we may go to the innermost level of the material reality. The yoga will take us like this. But other paths may just keep us to the outer level. Jnana yoga may keep us at the Brahman level. So, and one of the why this metaphor is disapproved sometimes is because what some people say again is that all paths lead to the same goal. No, there are some paths which will just take you out from here. Isn't it? They will take us completely away from no way closer to the ultimate reality. Take us further away. So, for example, if somebody spends their whole life or most of their life watching movies, so entertainment has always been a part of human life, human society. But in the past, entertainment was a break from normal life. Now, for many people, normal life is a break from entertainment. So the thing they look forward to, as soon as they get some time, okay, watch a movie, watch this, watch that. That's what they're immersed in. So then they are not even, you could say, in material reality. They are in their own mental, imaginary reality created by someone else. So all paths in that sense don't. So the wheel metaphor, it's problematic if it says that every single path will take us toward the center. No, it may not. Thank you. Yes. Okay, yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. So, can I just consider Gnana Yoga as controlled senses with unsatisfied soul? Like, just to fulfill their needs, like Steve Jobs, he controlled through any kind of meditation or something like that. He controlled his senses, but at the end, he's unsatisfied. But Bhakti Yoga will be satisfied with controlled senses. So, can we just...
Okay. Can we say that Jnana Yoga is controlled senses with unsatisfied soul? Yeah, definitely controlled senses are required for At one level, any kind of responsible functioning. We can say when sense control has multiple degrees. Say, for example, if somebody has to even do a job, you can't just watch movies or eat food or drink or something like that. Some level of sense control is required. So now there are different conceptions of after we control the senses, what do you want to do? See, in the material world, how it works is, if we consider this is a sense control, and say this is sense indulgence. So most people in one sense simply seek sense indulgence. Now some people seek sense control so that they can have better sense indulgence. Okay. So I will work very hard now. So full day, 5 days a week I'll work so that next weekend I can completely enjoy. So they seek sense control so that they can have greater enjoyment. Now we could say that above sense control is spiritual realization. So on the spiritual path, this way now. On the spiritual path, we want to go from sense control towards sense indulgence towards sense control to get spiritual realization. And those who control their senses but they're not really very spiritually connected, then they don't have spiritual realization. And in Gyan Yoga, is there this unsatisfied soul? Well, yes, ultimately it is.
Without spiritual realization,
Yeah, it is. It is unfulfilled soul. Now there can be different degrees. See, even at the Brahman level, there is some level of satisfaction. Brahmananda is also a level of happiness, but it is not the complete fulfillment of the soul. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes. Okay. We'll come back to you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the detailed lecture. My question is, if anyone gets the Brahman level realization or Paramatma realization, but not Bhagavan realization, and if they are stuck there, what is their path for them? Is there any possibility for them to go to Bhagavan realization? If yes, what is the path?
If somebody is at the Brahman level of realization, what happens to them? Well, they could stay there. Put it this way, that like I talked about this ladder. There is Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. So say if somebody, okay, where is this? If somebody is following a ladder which takes them to this level, now, if they are coming to the Brahman level, if they get the association of devotees, or if they get some, generally it's through association of devotees that they get some understanding of Bhagavan. So then from the Brahman level of realization, they can also go towards the Bhagavan level. So we have that. That's what happened to Parikshit Maharaj. Atma Ramascha Munayo Nirgrantha Pyurukrame. Because Atmaram means that he was at the Brahman level, but he went to the Bhagavan level. So that can happen. In his case, it was he heard about Krishna from a person, from a woodcutter who had heard from his guru, from his father and guru, that is Vyasadeva. So like that, sometimes for different people, if they get it, then they can move forward. Now there are some. So this, in general, it is in this world. In this world, if somebody, that means somebody is not, somebody is, there are two kinds of mukti. There is, if you consider liberation mukti, there is Jivan mukti, and there is Videha mukti. So Jivan mukti means that person is in this body, but person is completely free from attachments in this world. So if that has happened, then in the Jivan mukta, if they get association of devotees, they can get liberated. If they have Videha mukti, that means they have gone to the Brahman level, then generally speaking, they have to come from that Brahman level down to the world. And again, they generally come to Sattva level, some kind of sattvic existence over here. and from there they will go upward. Now in exceptional situations, sometimes if the great souls, if liberated devotees, they are descending from the spiritual level to the material level or ascending from the material level to the spiritual level, then if somehow some of the souls who are in the Brahman, if they get that association, they may also get elevated and liberated. Now if somebody is, so that means Brahman level realization could be in the material world, it could be in the spiritual level, it could be the spiritual level of reality. And then the trajectory forward will be essentially through some, they have to have some glimpse of the Lord's attractiveness. That's how they'll move forward. And then in general, if somebody is following a path that takes a ladder that takes them to Paramatma, there is no Brahman is a level of reality in the spiritual world. Now Paramatma is an expansion of the Lord for the purpose of this world. So in that sense, there is no Paramatma Loka in the spiritual world. So generally, those who realize the Paramatma, Dhyana, Vastita, by going deep into Dhyana, they realize the Paramatma. Then they have two options. When they come to this level, either they can go upward or they can go downward. That means when they see the Paramatma, they think that I am that Paramatma, and they want to enter into the oneness of the ultimate existence. Then they will go to the Brahman level. But if they understand that, okay, I'm the servant of this Paramatma. This Paramatma is my Lord. Then that person will rise to the spiritual world where they will have devotional attainment. But generally, because they have been in meditation, which is generally more inactive or contemplative, so then they will have a similar mode of service in the spiritual world. They may be in Shantarasa or something like that. Okay, thank you. Yes, Nanda, you had a question. You can send the mic.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So you were talking about Arjuna and Krishna, like instructions that Krishna gave Arjuna. So Arjuna is a Kshatriya. One of his major strengths was archery, and he got direct instructions from Krishna. How do I develop the intelligence to understand my strengths and convert that into service from whichever platform I am hailing from?
Welcome to the material world. It's not easy. That's why at one level, when we say we have to realize ourselves. So actually, generally, when we talk about, if we consider the three-level reality, there is the soul, the mind, and the body. So generally, when we say the realize yourself, that means we say realize yourself as the soul. But actually, realize yourself involves all these three levels. Let me say there's no need to realize that I am the body. I already think I'm the body. But realize yourself means you can, okay, what kind of body do I have? What kind of physical activities can I do? What kind of physical activities I'm not suited to do? Similarly with respect to the mind. So it's not so much realizing here doesn't mean it realizing means you can say here it means understanding the reality of what something is. So okay, what kind of mind do I have? What kind of things that I am attached to? What kind of things I'm interested in? So in general, if we are to serve Krishna, so the purpose of serving Krishna, if we consider if Krishna consciousness, there is the purpose of serving Krishna, and there is, you could say, the means for serving Krishna. So in general, the purpose of serving Krishna comes by realizing our spiritual side, and by understanding the soul. The purpose comes by understanding the soul, but the means comes by understanding the mind and body. And generally, Krishna uses the word swabhava for this. So we have to do some self-observation to understand what kind of mind do I have, what kind of body do I have. And Krishna talks about in general in this the guna and karma. So if we have the guna for something, that means generally we are if you consider two circles over here, if we have the guna to do something, that means we are comfortable doing it. We feel good doing something. Say, for example, if we just ask ourselves, if I had free time, what would I like to do? Say, I would just like to talk with this person. I would like to read a book. I would like to maybe chant some holy. I would like to do this seva. We all have different things. Mm. In Back to God magazine, there was an exercise which we had done that. And then when we had asked that if suddenly a devotee gets $1 million, how we would like to use those $1 million for serving Krishna? It's for serving Krishna only, that is clear. But how would you like to use those resources for serving Krishna? So then that may give us some understanding of what is our calling, what is our way to serve Krishna. So generally, what is it that we are comfortable doing? And then second is, what are we competent doing? If you have the karma for something, then we are competent at it. The best would be if you could find something which is the intersection of the two. Like somebody may be very comfortable playing music, playing a kartal and kirtan. But if they are not competent, then they are comfortable, everybody around them is uncomfortable. So we don't want that. Okay.
Prabhu, can I just ask a follow-up question? So I really like what you just said, Prabhu. So for every decision that I'll make based on my guna and karma, there'll be so I'll do an action and there'll be a reaction from the public or whatever. The result will be good or bad. But I think ultimately I should be at a level where I transcend that reaction so that I can keep going forward. Like I should not succumb to the reaction. For example, if I'm a musician and my music is so good and then everybody is like appreciating me, then I should not succumb to the praises and then try to focus on how do I become a better musician and lose the ultimate goal.
Okay, it's a good question. So if say somebody's calling or passion is music, then how much should they be concerned about how do people respond to it? Well, it depends. In one sense, there are certain objective standards of competence, isn't it? And how do we learn that? We learn that from other people. So other people, now we don't want to just talk about other people in terms of some people may be just uninformed critics, or some people may be just uninformed praisers. But somebody who knows the business, you have good talent in this area, you can work in this. So yes, it is true at one level, if we are working according to our swabhava, then we become so immersed. What Krishna says, karmanne vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan, that becomes natural. If we are doing something which is natural for us, we do it for the joy of doing it. Now of course we would naturally want whatever we are doing to be appreciated by the world. That's just a human longing. It's not necessarily a longing for fame and ego. It is just natural, if I've done something, I would like others to appreciate it, to be benefited by it. But even if that doesn't happen, I still do it. So I was reading some quotes on writing by different authors. Writing is one of my services. So it is that. So one famous author, he said that being read gives me great joy, but having written gives me even greater joy. So the process of writing itself gives me so much absorption. So both are important in one level, because if we just think that I'll just write without caring for the world, or I'll just do music without caring for the world, then it's difficult to improve. It's difficult to have some objective assessment also. Okay.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
So one way I put it is that be mindful of people's perceptions. Don't make your mind full of people's perceptions. Okay. Thank you. Any last question before we stop? Yes, please.
So, Hare Krishna Prabhu. so we do our day-to-day work. We earn money for something. We are earning money for sustenance, but it may not be always something that is our guna or what we are really good at.
Hmm.
But driving passion for working on a daily basis, it cannot be money alone, but
Yeah.
it cannot be the result of getting it is money. But they say that, okay, this money can be used for Krishna's purpose, but that is not the only way, or is that the ultimate way of looking at doing work itself? Like, because you're not actually doing the work all the time. All of us, we might be doing different tasks, but it may not be something that is what we are really passionate about on a daily basis. May not be.
Okay.
We might have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
diversification of work, but
Right.
when we are working itself, in most cases, it's very natural that we get more and more attracted to what we are earning, and like then we try to do better, and then we earn more, and so on. So it's like a
Mm.
very cyclic process. But at the end of the day, the outcome of it is supposed to be meant for Krishna. How do we act in that particular manner that it has to be channeled to Krishna in some sense?
Okay. Well, the honest answer will be when I find out, I'll let you know. Let's put it in. Let's try to analyze it in some ways. So, see if this is the action. Mhm. Then after the action comes the result of the action. And before the action, you can say comes the intent of the action. So for us, the ideal situation is where all of these are being directed towards Krishna. Hmm? So the action itself is connected with Krishna. The intent is connected with Krishna. The result is also connected with Krishna. So for example, if we consider we come to a temple and do some cooking, we do some deity worship, we do some book distribution, do some service. So the intent is very clear. I'm coming here to serve Krishna. The action itself is connected with Krishna. And if you say doing some book distribution, the results from the book distribution, they're also going for Krishna's service. So if all three are connected, we could say that is the deepest or the broadest level of connection with Krishna. In some cases, if we consider our job, in the job, we could say that the action may not be much connected with Krishna. I'm working in software, I'm working in medicine, this, that. So, but then the connection may be at the level of intention and the connection may be at the level of the result. So sometimes our intention may, yeah, as I said, our intention may be mixed. It is that, yeah, I want to offer, I'm doing this for Krishna, but I also want the results. I need wealth, I need this, I need that. I want the position that this gives me in society. I want the facilities that come from this, all those things. So it could have mixed level of intentions. But then intention is important. We try to have at least some part of our intention is serving Krishna. And then intention alone is not enough. Actually, from the results, we should be offering something to Krishna. So that could be, again, results could be we give some charity to Krishna, or we sometimes use some of the the result that we're getting from our service to Krishna, we use that from whatever the results we're getting from our work. So if we have a position in society, and if we could use that position for serving Krishna, then we do that. So we see the more and more aspects of our existence we can connect with Krishna, the better it is. Okay. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Um, in reality or in our work, right? We do, for example, I'm in the payment industry, right? The
You're in the
payment, online payment, payment tech. Oh my God, I'm not able to get the term.
fintech, it is called.
Fintech, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. See, I've been working there, but suddenly, like when I'm trying to frame the question, the point is like this one mind of mine says like, no, I mean, I'm trying to make it easier to trap the customer to get the loan. And I'm trying not, the customer should not even be feeling that it's just they are paying 56% of the interest. We try to make it more attractive by just showing the lesser amount or something like that. But half the time I feel like I'm either Bhishma or Vidura or Karna only, right? I'm not in the side like, no, I'm not. See, if you look at it, right, the trapping business is what? In that, how do we make it even more easier, even more easier, even more easier, so that I get more people and do business, right?
Yeah. See, it's a it's a difficult question, a difficult situation. I would say. See, in general, if we are doing some work, any work we are doing, Krishna says, "Sarva rambha hi doshena dhumena agniribhavrita." Every work is covered by fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. So if we start having a negative, we start looking at the negatives of work, we can look at every work as negative. Even if somebody said, in the doctor, you can say they're healing people. But then doctors don't work completely independently. Doctors are a part of a whole network in which there is big pharma, and the doctors have to prescribe particular medicines. Even if there's simpler cure, sometimes they just circumstantially can't do it. They have to just give a particular treatment, and that may involve the patient spending more money than what is necessary, the patient taking in certain chemicals which may not be actually good. What we don't know. Every activity has faults associated with it. So if we decide that I'll not do the activity because of the fault, then we'll not be able to do any activity in the world. And in general, any area of life we are in, if we are to function properly, we need to have a healthy respect for that area. If we are cynical, if we are negative, if we are cynical, we will undercut ourselves. Now, yes, we can't change the whole world. We can't change our profession. We can't change the broad rules of the game in which we work and which we are playing. But within that, we can try to be as positive, as helpful, as constructive and influence as possible. So that we can do. Now, yes, if we are trying to, if we are giving loans to people, if I'm making industry, we are helping, if I'm making finance available. So now there are, within that also there are supposed to be safety mechanisms. Who should be given a loan? Who should not be given a loan? And the idea is that it's not just we want to deprive people of money, but sometimes some people, if they misuse the money, they will get into more trouble. There are people who are enterprising and they can do some good in society. They can do some good for their family. They can do good in society. So, uh, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about this term. It is Loka Sangraham Evapi Sampashyan Kartum Arhasi. Loka Sangraha. Now, Sangraha literally means maintenance. So, Loka Sangraha means maintaining the world. So, each one of us has to do our karma so that the world can be maintained. And we say, I'm such a small person, what can I do to maintain the world? But actually, every person plays a role. Right now, we are able to talk, we are able to have this class because whoever is running the electricity board, they're doing a fairly good job. That's why we have light, we have a reasonably comfortable temperature. Whoever built this house, they did a decent job at building the house. So the world has to be maintained. The nature of the world is things keep going down, everything deteriorates, and human endeavor is required to be able to maintain the order of the world. So now sometimes the word artha, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, artha is sometimes used to refer to wealth, but artha at a broader level means resources. And in the broad dharmic tradition, dharma texts, artha is seen in two ways. Artha can be seen as a result of, it's a divine, it's a product of divine mercy, or it can also be a product of human ingenuity. Ingenuity means creativity. Human beings creatively think, okay, what can I do? So Arjuna had archery ability, but in specific situations, how was he going to use the archery ability? That was creative. when the Pandavas were given a raw deal, in the sense that they were just given the half of the kingdom, which was a barren wilderness. So they converted that into a prosperous kingdom. That is human ingenuity, and that requires effort. So we cannot be blind to the flaws in whatever work we are doing, but we cannot let ourselves become obsessed with those. So we look at the positives and try to be a part of the positive within that. That's how we can function in a state of emotional and mental health. Otherwise, if we are disrespecting and deriding and even loathing what we are doing, then we can't function in life. We won't be emotionally healthy. We will create toxicity within ourselves, and we'll create toxicity for those around us. So ultimately, we have to say, okay, I am in this situation by Krishna's arrangement. It could be my karma, it could be my choice, but ultimately my choice, my karma also works under Krishna's arrangement. So by Krishna's arrangement, I am in this situation. So how best can I serve Krishna in this situation? How can I choose wisely in this situation? Okay. Thank you. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It's a wonderful lecture. Every time I hear from you, we get new insight about Bhagavad Gita and how we can practically apply in our life. And thank you so much. And I hope you will keep ISV in your orbit whenever you travel. Thank you so much. And Prabhuji have several books.
Okay, so I'll just mention about them. So I've written some 27 books, out of which we have about 10 books we have here. So the new book, which is, you can see this is the latest book I've written. This is You Are Not Your Mind, You Are Better. So, so this is 64 reflections on the Bhagavad Gita. They are illustrated reflections, like I was drawing some simple diagrams. So like that, the diagrams are there. So that's if you want to learn how to manage your mind. And apart from that, there are a few other books also. We had Ram Navami recently. This is Wisdom from Ramayana on life and relationships, which talks about how we can draw life lessons from the Ramayana. Why say Vali and Sugriva were best of friends. They were brothers and best of friends, but they became mortal enemies. So how do misunderstandings occur? How do they worsen? How can we try to repair broken relationships? Or how did Kaikeyi, was not a bad person, do such a terrible thing? So how we can get misled or manipulated, and how can avoid that? Like that, there are 20 incidents you analyze and life lessons are drawn. And apart from that, there are a few other books also. There is a book, Gita for Daily Enrichment, just 365 reflections on the Bhagavad Gita. There is a book on reincarnation also, and it's empirical and logical basis. And a few other books. If you want, I'm ready to sign. I'm available for signing the books also. And if you take the whole book set, there's a 10 book set. And it's also available at a substantial 10 books we have. 10 book set we have. Chaitanya is there behind. It's also available at a substantial discount if you want. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Krishna, we will serve prasadam in garage. You can go from this side and line up, and then you can take the plate from garage and you can come in and sit. Thank you.